Hey everyone, thanks for joining us for today's webinar pre-Thanksgiving. Not surprising to have this density of Canadian presence, but a lot of other people have taken off the time for the Thanksgiving holiday, except for Lance, who's on the line. So Lance, thanks for being here, and hopefully you have some good plans ahead. These end of the month webinars have been focused on specifics in the tools, in the software tools, to make sure that everybody's aware of some of the features. And today we're going to be talking about programmatic change and some really exciting work that we've been doing recently with clients like the city of Ann Arbor, Michigan, the city of Riverside, California, soon to be Tulsa, Oklahoma just gets into this work on Monday, I believe, of next week. And the whole premise is that when you create data, programmatic data, through your work in program-based business intelligence and priority-based budgeting, you create a wonderful data set, but the hope is not to stop there. The hope is to be able to take action. And we've developed some methods that we'll share with you today on how to take action, and also functionality in the tools that we think and hope will be particularly of interest. So with me, we have Eric Keck and also Liz Johnston and other members of the ResourceX team. So we will get on with it. By the way, as you notice some of these transitions, these are all courtesy of Liz Johnston, who's a genius. And that just took a arrow shape and turned into a golden thread. And the golden thread is what we want to point you to. Lori, nice to see you. I know you were at our conference last year, and you might remember our focus on the golden thread from one of our keynote speakers, David Sewell McCann, who is a professional storyteller, and talked about the fascinating link between accounting and storytelling, and that accounting is a form of storytelling. In fact, the word derives its meaning from to take account of a particular place and time or a story that you're trying to tell. And we've definitely learned that over the course of our work, is that so much of the opportunity to take action on your program data is how you frame your story. And so in a way, we're trying to equip you with the tools to take positive action on your data, to make positive programmatic changes. And the best way to do that is to frame it in a storytelling framework. So it truly is a golden thread that we're trying to hitch the storytelling power to the vehicle of a program. Programs are far more effective in their storytelling potential power than line items are. So as we create our priority-based budgeting or program-based business intelligence data, and we want to move towards action, the idea is how are we going to be able to share our story by using the vehicle or the central character of the programs that we provide. I'm going to share 3 use cases for how some of our clients are taking their program data and moving toward insights. And hopefully this will give you a sense for how different communities are trying to take action. And the general framework that I think will be easy to remember is that you do all of your work to create a data set. You come up with your program inventory, you come up with costs for your programs, you come up with scores, and that's not the finish line. That's just the base level data. You do that so that you can generate program insights. Insights are opportunities, things that we could do differently in the future. And that's what begins to be exciting about all of this work. Insights are based on the data, insights that perhaps were unavailable or not obvious until you came up with your program data. And the insights are also not the finish line. Insights are potential energy that we need to convert into action. So our pathway is you create your data in order to generate insights, and insights are fantastic. They're all the things that you could do, but we really want to move towards actionability, and that's what we'll talk about today. And I'll focus on this in these 3 use cases. So in the city and county of Denver, they have a specific goal around equity. And they actually called their entire initiative the Program Inventory Initiative, because they actually weren't focused on the budget. They were focused on, we need to create this vehicle for change, our list of programs. And from that list, we can focus on our programs and start to think about what we might do differently in order to achieve a greater outcome in their case, which is equity. So what you're looking at on the screen is their result. They had a clear result, but they did not have a list of initiatives, a list of things that they want to do to achieve this particular result. And so what we did, after they created their program inventory, they assessed every program by looking through, they called it an equity lens, asking for each and every program they provide, give me an insight, give me an idea, an opportunity of a change that we can make to this program in order to make it more in line with our equity result. And the outcome of that is a report, a laundry list of recommendations at the program level that they can bring to the budget process, but they have a list of initiatives now that they can take action on, they can make decisions around. And I point to two over on the right-hand side that are sticky. They remain in your mind because they are so non-obvious that it proves the point. When they looked at each and every program through an equity lens, looking for opportunities that they could change that program, you might think that, well, I bet they did a host of things around public safety to increase equity. Maybe they did a host of, they came up with a lot of initiatives or great ideas around criminal justice that would be in line with equity. But probably one of the last programs that you would think about in terms of its impact on equity is snow removal. And that's what you see in the top right, but that's the power of looking at each and every program. When they looked through the equity lens at snow removal, the Public Works or Department of Transportation and Infrastructure Department said, if we know some of the neighborhoods in the city and county of Denver that where we want to improve access, economic access and opportunity and equity, when it comes to snow removal, there are certain areas where vehicle ownership is quite low. And when we have a snow event like we just had in Denver this morning, the insight was maybe if we can clear pedestrian walkways and sidewalks and make sure that people have access all the way from their homes to a nearby bus station, that they can get to their jobs, they can get downtown, they can access the economy, making sure that they can get to the local grocery store and so on. That was a programmatic change, an insight to enhance equity, talking about snow removal for an upgraded level of service that they would provide that they don't provide throughout the rest of the city. But how powerful that even when we talk about snow removal, we can talk about increasing equity. If you can increase equity with snow removal, you can increase equity with any program. The second example here is the impound lot. And when they looked at this particular program, they're looking at fines as a barrier for some of the residents to be able to re-access their vehicles, access their jobs. So they're taking a look at reviewing and renewing their approach to fines. And other communities have seen this when it comes to parking fines and so on. But here's a great story using program insights with only a program inventory to talk about increasing equity. Another example is you might actually have a list of initiatives like Denver had for equity. Some of our clients have a list of initiatives for things that they would do to impact climate change in a positive way. One of our clients in the city of Ann Arbor, Michigan, they have they call it the A20 plan for climate action to zero emissions. And the booming question is, how, they have the initiatives, they all have a price tag, but how are they going to get them funded? And so this is a great use case for programmatic insights, is how to take those initiatives and go through prioritization in order to see, do they truly stack up to the results that the city council and the community care about, and how can they make sure that they get those funded? And then finally, another powerful use case for program insights is when you have your list of initiatives, they're actually a high priority overall, but you're looking for the resources to fund them, and you want to look within, because it's quite possible that you might not be able to generate new resources in order to fund those initiatives. So we will talk about this, but the application of what many of you have already seen, but for anybody who's new to this, we call it the blueprint. The blueprint for action is to look for insights where you have certain programs where you definitely know that you need to increase their level of service, and you're going to look for opportunities within to mine your current budget and free up resources to fund your climate action plan or your equity initiatives. And you're going to look for entrepreneurial revenue generating opportunities to be able to fund what needs funding on the left-hand side. All of these cases are ways to take your program inventory and start to think about what might you do differently if any of those 3 use cases above represent something that you're hoping to do. If you've seen, we point to South Jordan as the poster child for the scoreboard for how this could look over time, where for most of our communities, we have substantial new needs, whether it's COVID related or advancing equity or trying to tackle climate action. And we don't have the resources just ready-made coming from our local economy to fund it. In South Jordan's case, they increased funding by 18% to new initiatives and new programs, while their local tax base was essentially flat at 1%. The way they did it was coming up with programmatic insights for change and executing on those ideas to free up 11% of their current budget and reallocate towards the new needs, and come up with entrepreneurial ways to generate another 6% revenue growth on top of their base 1% overall. And we think this is particularly inspiring for all of our organizations where we simply know our needs now and into the future outweigh, for the most part, or could outweigh our ability to fund them solely from our local tax base overall. So with those 3 use cases in mind, I'll try to set the framework for how you think about developing program insights, and then Eric Keck is going to get into some more specific detail. As a reminder, and especially for those who have not been through program-based business intelligence or priority-based budgeting, we create a core set of data. And that data starts with a program inventory, where you're simply looking for every program that you provide. We look through additional lenses to add context to the story of how we provide that program. So a program simply by name is probably insufficient. It's helpful, but a program with a description talking about how we provide a particular service starts to add to the story. A program with a cost, think about snow removal. You could say, we plowed the roads. We plow all roads, and now in Denver, we plow certain residences, even for pedestrian walkways. And the next question that you might have is, well, how much does this cost overall? What is the current resource allocation? We're building insights about the program alignment to outcomes. How does this program help you achieve a safer society or economic vitality or mobility and transportation and so on? And then finally, what direction is this program headed in? Are we talking about this program on a trajectory to grow? Are we talking about a program on a trajectory where you actually have a goal of sunsetting this program? But the idea is we need to develop this base level data set in order to strengthen the story that we're talking about for the program, and then fundamentally, and most importantly, align the program with the goals that we're trying to achieve. All of this data sets us up to talk about the future of that program that we're going to provide, and we have outcomes that the program is in line with achieving, and we can talk about the programmatic changes and the change to its future, and we can talk about the level of mastery, the skill set that you're going to have to attain in order to achieve your outcome, whether it's equity in Denver's case, sustainability, climate in Ann Arbor's case, COVID-19 shortfalls in everybody's case, except for a handful. And then what from our 4 levels of mastery will help us to either communicate about our program data, reallocate resources or generate new revenue, align our resources with the results that we're trying to accomplish, or ultimately how we might be able to leverage partners in our community overall. I think it goes without stating, but just to make a point that I have not said yet, you could do this at the line item level. You could say, we're going to come up with stories to talk about for our line items. We're going to talk about a great story about supplies, or you might have a great story to talk about for meals and lodging. But even just using those two examples and this line item budget in the background, I think you can start to get the point. This is from a particular police department. If we want to talk, for example, about reimagining police services or the dramatic changes that are taking place in public safety, the power of the story does not exist at meals and lodging. The power of the story does not exist at supplies and services. The power of reimagining police comes from talking about what happens in dispatch when someone calls in a crisis and that dispatch personnel has just a little bit of time to assess the emergency and deploy the appropriate resources. And now we're trying to talk about maybe our police officers have been asked to do too much. The program, dispatch, carries far more narrative density than line items on their own. And this is part of the change that we're looking for. Before I move it over to Eric Keck, we do have a graphic in the slides of the blueprint, which is a great storytelling framework to talk about the programs where we need to grow and to talk about our strategies, our opportunities, our program insights for freeing up and reallocating resources and generating new revenues to fund those new needs overall. And so last but not least, if you look at across the board, so many of our organizations are really starting to resonate with this idea that we're going to become more data-driven, that data is crucial. Our message to you is that it's not just data, it's program data. To be program data driven is a leg up, a new elevation to be able to talk about where you're headed with your resources and the outcomes that you wish to achieve. With that context, I'm going to turn it over to Eric Keck to start to talk about moving from the data you create to the types of insights and actions that you can begin to execute.
Thank you, Chris. I'm going to talk to you a little bit today about how we at ResourceX have taken a step back and then a deeper analysis and observation of clients. Why are some clients successful and others not so successful with respect to implementing change? And so we're going to talk a little bit about change today. As you know, this is something that's very passionate for me. One of the things that we know about change is it's very difficult to do at the individual level, right? When we're talking about trying to change their habits, our diet, our exercise, it's even more difficult at the organizational level. Matter of fact, 70% of all change efforts by organizations fail. So as we took a step back, we looked at what do we do or what can we do with data that's already been created? A lot of organizations that we work with do a stellar job of creating the data. Now, taking that data and making it actionable and doing something with it is seemingly more difficult for others than some. And so as we began to look at creating a workshop surrounding insights, we thought about this. How can we move an organization from creation of ideas to taking action on ideas? And we thought about it with three simple questions. Having organizations talk to each other and collaborate about what we could do. What could we do in response to any of those issues that Chris raised, whether it's COVID-19, lack of resources, we've got a reimagination of police, we've got equity or racism issues. What could we do to tackle that through our programmatic data? The next question is, what should we do? So you've got this giant universe of options, right, that your organization will probably identify. Then we want to winnow those down into things that we should do. Now, we're going to move you from could, should to commit. And how we do commitment is saying, what will we do? And that's the third piece of our workshop, which is called the approval phrase. So what we've really done here, as is shown, is creating a framework. We help to create a framework where your organization unleashes its own internal consultants to address your challenges and opportunities. And what we found is this: with change again, no one likes to have change forced upon them. But when people are engaged in a way in which they can become part of the solution and create that, the innovation, the ideas, and the collaboration increase tenfold. And that's the way we've designed our workshop to create that situation to occur. So if we think about insights, think about them this way. They're really like a funnel. And so as we're going to see these 5 insights drop in, the first thing you do is creation. Again, what could we do? That second level is we're going to recommend which ones we should do. And lastly, we're going to, at the bottom of the funnel, we get these actionable insights. And again, if we do this through setting up some exercises that are really collaborative for organizations to work with each other cross-departmentally. We don't want individuals to be pigeonholed in just public works or parks or utilities. We want crowdsourcing of good ideas to transpire. And we created some exercises to help elicit that at each of these levels: that create level, that recommend level, and the approve level. And again, as we talked about, the most important thing about this is that it is done in a way in which organizations aren't feeling this top-down pressure to make change happen. It's done by organically reaching into departments and including everyone and hearing their voices to help create with these actionable insights. Next slide. So again, as we look at the tools that we've created, the goal really is this. We don't want to be the consultants that come in with a briefcase and ask your people, hey, what do you do around here? And then come up with some solutions that are boilerplate or templated. This is your own organization determining, again, through collaboration and communication. In some cases, as we've seen with some of our clients over the last few months, this is communication that's being done that's never been done before. Departments that haven't ever spoken with each other, people who've never met even within small organizations saying, wow, I didn't realize that you did this work. And then what ends up happening is magical, in that people begin to have conversations with each other and throw ideas off to create actionable ideas. And again, the last thing that we'll say is this: as for any organization that's really concerned about continuous improvement, what we want to encourage organizations to do is not just this one interaction with Resource X, where we create this environment to create the space for these ideas to happen. This should be happening multiple times, over and over, to create that basically a habit of continuous improvement for an organization, where they're actually utilizing their own data, not some external data, not some benchmark, but your own programs leading you to actionable insights and moving forward to create reallocation of resources. And it's not just for cutting or finding resources, but it's also for saying, listen, we have a program that really needs to have its service level increased. Those insights could be just as valuable to an organization as they move forward. So again, we want organizations to ask themselves and do a quick analysis. Where are you now? Where are we? What are we struggling with? What is impeding us or preventing us from doing great work? One of our favorite authors here at ResourceX is Aaron Dignan, and he asked this question: what is keeping you and your people from doing the best work of their lives? We want you to ask your organization that same question. And then, not dissimilar to that, where is it that you're trying to go? And again, that really gets to the heart of, are we really trying to transformatively change our organization through our budget, through policing, through equity, whatever that issue is? These insight workshops are designed to help you be the vehicle by which to make meaningful change happen at the programmatic level. So now we're going to hear from Liz, who's going to tell you a little bit about the mechanics of how the system works.
Thank you, Eric. And thank you, Chris, for navigating all the slides for us. I think where Eric just left off is exactly where I want to kick it off, which is to say the programmatic data, the fact that we state that change happens at the program level, it is imperative that you have that data on which to build your future. We like to say that every program has a future, and you'll see we have listed several default ideas for how you could take a program into the future under this topic of program change. And what we're showing you right here is not only that you have created the data, but we are showing you a pathway that we have defined for how to help you get from data creation to data utilization. I think one of the things that we hear so commonly is that we need to be data driven. You need to have this information. You need to be making decisions based on data, but how do you actually do that? And this workflow that is created and is available in the online PBV tools is just that pathway. How can you get from the data creation to that actionability and actually working towards that future that you are trying to achieve? So what you see here is every program that is created. It's okay, Chris, you keep going. You have every program here. And what we do is we click create to create an insight. And we use these program change recommendations as a way for you to go through this insight creation through whatever lens is most important to you. You could take these program change recommendations and look at them through the lens of sustainability or climate change. You can look at them through the lens of COVID response. You can look at them through the lens of whatever is the outcome you are working towards. And what this does is it allows you to state, I can achieve sustainability through this partnership opportunity. I can achieve sustainability through a program efficiency. Whatever that lens is that you want to look through, we say you can tag every single program with that opportunity. And you will also see, excuse me, we have the no recommended change option as well, because sometimes the most important thing to know is that you need to continue to offer this program just as you're offering it today. That is the future of this program. We need to continue to offer it as we're offering it today. So you take all of these different program changes, you take the lens through which you want to apply those changes. And Chris, if we can go to the next one, we can then begin to further describe that opportunity. So when you tag your program with the change of whether it's partnership efficiency, cost recovery, service level increase, service level decrease, then we start to further describe that with how complex is it going to be for us to achieve this? Do we have a level of high complexity or low complexity? What about the timeline? Are we looking at something that we can accomplish now? Is this something that we need a little bit of planning for and we need to work towards this in the next fiscal year? Or are we looking at this as a really long-term solution and it's going to be, we're going to have to really work our way through to get this implemented? We tag the programs with that information. We also can add a budget impact. So assigning a financial description to an insight, whether that is an ongoing or one-time expense or revenue. And then we can explain exactly how we think that that's going to be impactful. So you end up with this library of opportunities. First, step one, create. We have a library of opportunities that are described. We now know if they are high or low level of complexity. We know if they can happen now or if we need to plan for this in the future. And we can assign a dollar amount to that opportunity. This report here that you are seeing in front of you, this is just a breakdown of the first few pages of a specific section. And I see that Dawn, maybe Dawn didn't mean to raise her hand. Dawn, do you have a question?
Sorry, yes, I do have a question. I'm just being a Zoom newbie apparently today. Can you have more than one, how would I describe it? Can you have more than one lens that you want to use? So could you do all of this insight stuff for sustainability and then also do it for budget reductions or something like that? Like, can you have multiple lenses and see the things differently that way?
So Dawn, yes and no. You can assign multiple insights to a program. And what I would recommend in this scenario where you might have a really specific lens that you wanted to look through. And so you really wanted everybody to look at each program and talk about how it could be applied to climate action. But then you're just looking for how to address a budget shortfall. And those are two separate things. You want people to look through two different lenses. While we would use the exact same program changes and descriptions, in that insight description, you could say, for sustainability, this is the recommendation, this is the insight we're tagging it with. And then you can create a second insight and say, to address the budget goals of fiscal year 2021, this is the insight that we're tagging it with. So every program can have multiple insights. It is just a little bit more manual to assign. You would just want to make that designation in the description towards which lens that particular insight is targeted.
So if this year, if you don't mind, if this year sustainability is our #1 goal, so we do all of our program insights for sustainability, but then next year, equity is our biggest goal because we achieved some of our sustainability things. Do we lose? If we do it again, do we lose all? We could clear the slate is what I kind of understand and start, or we could just add an extra column. But is it searchable and mineable if we just put it in the comments?
Yes. So
Okay.
What you would end up with is this PDF report, which of course is great for visualization and sharing the information, but then you also have it in a downloadable Excel format so that, yes, you could say, okay, I want to search for everything that was low complexity that could happen now and that pertain to sustainability. And then you could also then look and say, I also want to look at the things that are going to save us anything more than $5,000 in ongoing expenses, or through the lens of equity. Now again, that is a slightly more manual process because we would need you to enter that term in the insight description that you were really working towards equity if that wasn't the only goal you were working towards.
Okay, thank you.
Sure. Okay, so this is the PDF report. As Dawn pointed out, and I didn't include it in these slides, which was silly, you also have it in an Excel format. But here you will be able to see broken out not only by complexity and timeline, but also by specific insight or program change recommendation. So you will be able to see everything broken out that has been marked for a program efficiency, that has been marked for a service level increase, and so on and so forth. So that's step one. But if you'll recall Eric's funnel, creation of insights is just that. It is the sharing of the organization's ideas. It is taking everything out of every person's brains and putting it down into a place where it can be communicated, where it can be discussed, and where people can let their voice be a part of the conversation. But step two is to say, okay, we have all of these ideas. Now, how are we going to act on every single one of these? Unrealistic, chaos inducing. And so the next step is to go to that recommend level. So if you saw in the first section, there was a button that said create. Well, now we have a button that says recommend. And you'll see at the top, you will have all insights, my insights, and then all recommendations and my recommendations. This is so you can see organizationally what is being created and recommended, not just what you have created and recommended. Now, when you take a program or an insight, when you take an insight and you recommend that for action, you will be prompted to further develop that idea. So you will recall we already have the program name, the program change recommendation, how that's going to be accomplished through that insight description. We have the financial ties to that. We have complexity and we have timeline. Now we really want to flesh that out even more, because we are actually saying this is a change that should be made. So in doing that, in pressing that recommend button, you are prompted to explain why you're recommending this particular insight, what needs to happen in order for this opportunity to be successful, who the change will impact. So if you are looking cross-departmentally, or you have specific positions within the department that would be impacted by this opportunity, you want to make sure that, that's all accounted for. What resources are required? Again, looking not just at the obvious, but also really thinking through what are the resources that are going to be needed, or what resources will this free up? Looking through it from both directions. And then any other information that you think is going to be helpful in the decision-making process. You are making this recommendation, but we have another step as well. So you are really going to pursue a full-fledged recommendation by clicking that recommend button, pulling in every other program, all the resources, all the people who are impacted by this recommendation. And Chris, if you'll next slide. And again, we have reports, both the Excel and the PDF, but you'll notice that this PDF looks slightly different from the previous. So the previous is the library or bank of ideas that you can go back to, that you can draw upon for years to come. This is what has been recommended to happen immediately, or based on the timeline, how immediate, but this is what is going through the recommendation process right now. And you can see the comparison between blue and yellow. Blue is everything that has been created, and yellow is everything that has been recommended. Again, these are broken out by complexity, timeline, specific area or focus of change. And then you can see each of those insights with that description and the financial impact on each row. So you now have even more information about how you can progress down this pathway to action. And then the final step is to approve those recommendations. So you now have a full list of ideas from your entire organization, a really fleshed out list of recommended opportunities. And the final step is to go through and click the approve button. And that is going to be the thing that signals that this action has taken place, that this approval has happened, not just by the person who created the insight, but that you have gone through the communication with leadership, that you have a plan of action, and that you are ready to move forward with this specific opportunity or insight. So that is the last step of our insight creation pathway. So you can see really beginning at the creation of programs. That is where we are able to start this conversation. These are the types of ideas and sharing that can happen at that program level. We ask that everyone who is participating in PBB or PBBI to be a part of helping with the idea and insight generation. We go through the recommendation, which is a really well thought out creation of a plan and all of the impacts, all the way through approval, where you can track this in your online PBB tools and apply it to the future years of your PBB models. So with that, Eric, Chris, myself, I think Mike is also on the line. If there are questions or ideas for how you might be able to apply this in your organization, we are here to discuss and answer questions.
Don.
I haven't seen you guys in a while, and I haven't done a ton of PBB stuff since earlier this year, but I logged in because I thought we had done some insights, and ours looks different than this newer version. So we would just need to get that upgraded. Is that how that happens? You guys just put us on the new system or something? Yeah, will it save all of the ideas that we have in there?
Yeah, we can migrate your current insights and put them into the new portal. for
Okay.
certain, yes. And again, the way in which we've been rolling these workshops out is that we kind of do a guided method. And heretofore, they've been in 3 steps. However, we could collapse those into one workshop that would help you to do the creating, recommending, and approval all in one too. But because we want to, again, for organizations to be successful, we broke it down into chewable bites, if you will, that people can create, then come back a couple weeks later and then recommend, a couple weeks later, then approve. But yes, Don, the short answer to my long-winded speech there was we can move and migrate your current insights, they're not lost, and put them into the new portal for sure.
I really liked the recommendation report. Like, I think losing all of your whole random list of ideas is super valuable. And then just being able to recommend 5 or 10 that you're actually going to action. I really like that. So good job, guys.
Thanks. Don and Paul, this is probably inspired by our work together with you all at the very beginning of the year, when you can imagine what we did was more on the what could we do? It was phase 1, like what's the giant universe of opportunities, and through spreadsheets we were trying to keep track of it all. As you moved that to council for decision, there's that middle step where we were fleshing out live in workshops, what's the detail of the cost savings and the execution plan. The DNA of that work together partially inspired everything that you're seeing here. Is more of a systematic way to move through. Here's everything people came up with. Now, would you actually recommend it? And if so, what are the details? What are the questions we should ask that a decision maker would want to know before saying yes to, and finally move it forward for a decision? The last thing I was going to add was, I think it's really neat, and Don, you just said this, like maintaining all of the ideas, even though you might only move forward and recommend a subset. When you might remember the Salem, Oregon crew last year, when they were going through an insight exercise, a couple of staff members said, man, didn't we do a really creative revenue workshop like 3 years ago on all the different ways we could generate revenue? And from the city manager on down, they're like, yeah, we did. Does anybody have that report? No. Are any of those ideas, did we take action on some of them? Are some of them still viable? No idea. So thinking about that lost effort, that organization went through a valuable exercise. They came up with a bunch of ideas, and that's just what happens. Time moves on, and you sure wish that you had them. That's where we're trying to keep track of them all here and say, if you need to go back, and now you just executed a handful of ideas for COVID shortfalls in 2020, but guess what? 2021, you're going to see the economic impacts of what continues to take place. You'd sure love to go back to the big list and say, is there anything else we can still work on?
I have one more question. And you may have said it and I just missed it, but in the recommendation report, does it show the HR impacts? Because that was something that we've had to show, we've had to create a report here that would show service changes and the HR impacts.
Yeah. And this question maybe is a little more broad, Dawn, than what you're asking for, but you could certainly talk about whom is this going to impact within the organization. And so anytime there's a change, we would like to identify or have the person who's putting this forward identify who's this going to impact. A lot of times what transpires is ideas come up and people don't think through just what you're talking about. How's this going to impact personnel? But whose time is going to be impacted by this as well? A lot of times people are looking for a technology improvement or enhancement, but they didn't talk to IT about it. Well, that kind of goes into the third workshop that we have, or the third phase of you've recommended it, but before it's approved, it could be approved with changes or amendments and or a denial. But part of that thought process, as you just articulated, Don, is who's this going to impact personnel wise? How's this going to impact us with technology? How's this going to impact our citizenry? How's this going to impact politics? Those are all lenses by which that approval process needs to examine before you actually hit approve, and that goes to your city manager, city administrator, county manager, whatever your form of government is. Those are all questions that we want to have answered.
And Dawn, another important piece that I think exists in the recommend phase is that you can see not only what you have recommended, but you can see what others have recommended. And so even before you get to that approval phase, you can begin to look through and say, well, that's funny. Somebody made a recommendation about a program that's going to greatly impact me. I should probably communicate with them, or you could enter that information into that other box. But it provides that more global view prior to, getting into a meeting and being surprised by that recommendation. You are able to go through and see everything that has been recommended and all of the details associated with that. And then you can contribute to it as well.
Okay, thank you.
Hi, can I?
Becca or Paul?
No, it was
I
Becca.
don't know who had their hand up first.
Well, if Becca's first, she can have the floor. I talk too much anyways.
Oh, you're all right, Paul. Yeah, go ahead,
Right.
Becca.
Cool beans. I guess I'm a little late to the game. I didn't realize you guys were doing these cool webinar sessions. Liz had sent me an invite for this one and I was like, oh, heck yeah, let me hop on and check it out. So I guess I'm just curious if there's a way to go back and see some of the other webinars that you guys have done, or if this is going to be available, because I wasn't able to get my director on for this call just because, scheduling is crazy right now with the holiday. So I'm just curious if there's a way to go back and check those things out.
Becca, I'm going to put a YouTube link in the chat, and all of the things that are, we have it. I do understand that today is Tuesday, but we typically have these on Wednesdays. We just didn't want to do it right before the holiday. But there is a playlist in our YouTube channel that is called Wednesday Webinars. And so I will, I'm going to just go get the link and then I'll put it in the chat.
Yeah, Paul, go ahead. You had a question?
Yeah, well, no, just more of an observation. Good work to ResourceX. Just since I was involved with the work that we did in St. Albert, I see some of it's made it to the tool, and it's just I'm sitting here reflecting on that. The more you folks can keep people in the tools, the better. It was always the weird part when we were working on this in St. Albert was we had to eventually get into spreadsheets and then kind of work through it. So I think there's a ton of value. And then just another thought would be, as organizations go ahead and they estimate what the savings are going to be, it'd be kind of cool to say, to be able to have a part of the tool where it actually documented the savings over time, right? So like 10 years from now, if you're in a municipality and council goes, so, how much have we saved over the last decade? And there's been a ton of turnover of staff because clearly people that are as gifted in PBB, they don't stay with one organization, they move around the region. Sorry, that's an aside for Dawn primarily. So if that's the case, you don't want to lose that intel, right? And I think it'd be kind of cool to see that, and also to see if over time, how good are we at estimating what we think the savings are going to be? You might think something's $50,000 and you get into it, it's only half of that. And so this is all a journey and a process. And I think the more you can keep people in the tools, the more you can keep the intel in the organization, and the more you can keep you can bring council back to those numbers. So just a comment.
No, that's great feedback, Paul. And that's what we love about our community, is that we want to have this type of dialogue and understand what would be valuable and functional for you, and what would be helpful for, again, continuing that culture of PBB in your organization. And so totally agree. And I think one of the things that was really paramount to us, looking back through the last year and beyond, was what could we do to make sure that people are in the tools and not having to use Excel like you guys. Man, I look back at your workshop back in whenever that was, January, February, I'm like, wow, what a yeoman's work you guys did with 270 something programs or more in an Excel rather than in our tools. So yeah, great point. And I think Jacky's on the line today too, and she's now helping to design our new tools. And so that's some good feedback we can take to her as well.
Yeah, having a running scoreboard of actions taken verified with the intention of the action. Was this a program efficiency savings? What's the laundry list? Think of the wins for council, to be able to look back and say, you know, we started in $10 million worth of programs with $700,000 from the citizens, and to be able to keep that tally. We're looking at, so Fort Sask, also nod to your area, they published in their budget book, it's really good, all of their actionable changes. It comes across really well. To your point, Paul, Brad Steckert and I right now are transferring what they put in their budget book, all of these programmatic changes, because they are blueprint related. Their efficiencies, their service level decreases, their partnerships, their service level increases, they're all of that nature. And then we're communicating it back in the insights in the tools to be able to show them, hey, you can now report on this and come up with the summary of things that you just did, and also to try to log what still might be out there. But yeah, great feedback. Thanks.
I have to run, guys, but it's super great to see you, and thanks for the good presentation. Enjoy your holiday, and we'll see you again.
Thanks, Don. Thanks for joining.
Thanks, Don.
Bye, Don. I miss you. I'm going to hop off too, folks. Nice seeing you as always. And hopefully we'll get to work with you guys.